show you how to make this necklace with the treasure box Nature's Bounty #2. And we're just going to make a little multiple strand in the front necklace with the large gemstone as the focal. And I think it turns out really pretty. I give you a couple different options for your components, so you may want to stay tuned and listen to that because the components do not come in the box. And then I made another version too, just so you can see different color elements in this. Let me move this. And how if you string a little bit different lengths, you get just a little bit different look also. So there's lots of ways that you can modify this to make it to your taste and to suit your particular color of pendant. So, because not all of them have the same colors in them. They're all very, very different. So that is what we're going to do today. And let's go ahead and look and see what we'll need. Okay, for this project today, we're going to be using the large pendant that came in the Nature's Bounty treasure box. We're going to be using the banded agate strand that also came in the treasure box. We're going to be using 12 of the 6mm bead caps. We're going to be adding to the Nature's Bounty box a spacer bead. So I'm using an 11/0 Toho that is nickel plate. Now you can use, or nickel color, you can use whatever you want for a spacer bead. Doesn't necessarily have to be an 11/0, doesn't have to be a Toho, doesn't have to be anything like I'm using. You can just use a spacer, modify your stringing to fit with your spacers. Then we are going to be using a couple of the charms. We're going to be using 2 of the long leaf charms that are in the box and 2 of the Monstera leaf charms that are in the box. And then we are going to be using some size 2 crimp beads. I'm using a Beadalon size 2 because I'm using medium soft flex. You can use whatever beading wire you have on hand or prefer to use. That is fine. This is what I happen to be using today. Then we will be using some of the twisted rosy brown crystals that are in the box. We'll be using the jump rings that came in the box. We'll also be adding a larger jump ring. Now I'm not sure which one I want to use, so I picked out 2 larger jump rings. This is so that you can get it over the connector and into the bail of the pendant. So you may want to just kind of play around in your stash and find something that works really well. This one I think is going to be a little bit too big, and this one could work very well. So I've got them both out just in case. Then you need to have a connector. So we're going to be using 3 connectors. So you can use anything that's larger and closed if you'd like, or larger and open. These are open, large connecting jump rings, and I can close it very tightly and use that for my connectors, or I can use in treasure box #1, you have some of these connectors that I sent. I know a lot of you did not get treasure box #1, and a lot of you didn't get treasure box #2. You may just be looking at this for the design. So you can use whatever you have as a connector. It can be either open or closed. And if you don't have that, you can use toggles, this end of a toggle, for your connectors. I do that quite often when I can't find a connector I like. And this is nice because you have the loop on the bottom that you can connect your bail to, and then on the top, you can turn it this way, connect your 2 strands that come from here to here, and your 1 strand that goes up around the neck from this area here. So if you have 3 matching toggles, or perhaps 1 really fancy one you want to use in front and 2 that match towards the end, you can do that also. Just get creative with what you have, and you should be able to scrounge up enough to make this design. And then, of course, you will need a toggle or some kind of clasping too. And so I believe that's it. Let's go ahead and get started with this project. Okay, to start this project, we're going to cut 6 pieces of wire. We're going to cut 2 about 6.5 inches long, 2 around 8 inches long, and 2 11 inches. And then we're just going to set aside all of these except for one of the 6-inch long. And then we're going to grab a connector, and we are going to grab a crimp bead, and we're going to connect one of the wires to the connector, and then we will string it, and then we will do one of the 8-inch. So we'll have a shorter strand towards the top here going out this way, and a longer strand underneath it. So we're going to begin by picking up one of the crimp beads, put it on your wire, and then we're just going to bring the wire around the connector and slide the crimp bead down. Hold the crimp bead somewhat close to the connector and pull the longer wire so that you connect it down. And don't have too much excess wire on this side, but enough for you to work with. And then just bring your your crimp bead down to the connector. Don't leave a huge loop, but enough so that it has movement. And then look at your wires. Turn it sideways here, like this. Look at your wires and make sure they're laying side by side. Just like this. And then grab your crimping tool and place it to where your crease in the middle and the second divot is going to go between those two wires and squeeze. Just like that. And then once you have that crimped, turn it to where your two tubes that you've created on either side of that fold are side by side, and you place that into your crimping tool in the first divot so that those two sides touch the crimping tool and squeeze. Make sure you get a nice, pretty crimp. You can doctor it up by going around it a little bit. Let's see what we've got. Now that worked out okay. Mine was a little squished, and so all I did was just shape it. In that first divot, you can just kind of turn your tool and shape it so that it looks good, because this is in the front of your necklace, so you want to make sure that it doesn't look too bad. And then we are going to cut this down a little bit. And then grab one of your bead caps and just slide the bead cap from the small end down so that the flared end is out towards your beads, and slide it over both of those little wires. So if you have a bit of a tail there, make sure it goes over that tail. And then I'm going to start stringing this. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with some of my agates, and I want each side to look a little bit symmetrical. They're all very different, so they're not going to look totally symmetrical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of pick out two beads that go well together, and I'm going to hold one aside for my other side, and I will put the other one on to my wire here. That one's got a little blob. So I'm going to start here. And then this side, I can do this one over here. Let's see if I have something that matches a little bit better. Some of them have marks on them and little blobs on them. They're natural gemstones. So I just kind of want to make sure that it's somewhat the same on either side. It doesn't have to be a lot, and it can be completely random if you want. And then I'm going to pick up an 11/0 seed bead, and then I think maybe two 11/0 seed beads actually. And then I'm going to use one of my crystals, and then two 11/0 seed beads, and one of my agates. And again, I'll pick out a couple that I think kind of go together well for my next one. Set it aside and drop this down. And then two more seed beads. and another crystal. And this can be done any way you want it to be. You just have to make sure the next strand you make is a little longer than this first strand, and you also want to make it symmetrical on the other side, exactly the same. So you can design it any way you actually want to design it. It doesn't have to be perfectly the same. Let's see. A lot of them are very different than the others, so it's kind of hard to make a match, and they don't have to. I'm just kind of picky, so I do weird things. I'm going to put another one on here, and then I will put that one for my third, and then 2 more. And a crystal. And then 2 more. And an agate. Okay, let's see, that one and that one. Let me see if that's going to be, yeah, I think that's going to be just about right. So what I'm going to do now, now that I have my strand the way I want it to be, I'm going to pick up a crimp bead and another connector. I'm going to go around the connector and into my, whoops, first I want a bead cap. I want these to have bead caps on the ends. They don't have to, so if you don't have any of your bead caps left and you don't have any on hand, you do not have to have the bead caps. You could always just put a little crimp cover over it or just crimp it. It'll be fine. Then we're going to go through the crimp bead and underneath the bead cap. And pull this through. Okay, come on, you don't go through that bead. There we go. So I'm going to grab my chain nose so that I can grab a hold of this and pull it. Pull it down to where you have a nice size loop to go around your connector. You don't want it huge, but you do want it to be able to move. And you're going to get a little bit of slack. Make sure this is tight because you're going to get a little bit of slack just because we have this wire sticking out, and once we cut it, that will allow a little bit of slack so that your beads move on your wire okay. Then we're just going to do the same thing. Look at how your wire goes through your crimp tube, and you want to go over the top of it as the beads lay horizontal, or as the wire lays horizontal. You want to go between those 2 wires like this and squeeze in the second divot of your crimping tool. Turn it over and you can see the fold there. Now I want to go in the first divot and put the 2 tubes that on either side of the fold into my crimp tool and squeeze. And then I'm just going to doctor it up a little bit just to make sure it's nice and tight and pretty and round. Just like that. Then I'm going to take my end cutters and try to get as close to this bead cap as I possibly can. If I had a skinnier pair, I could kind of go up into there and cut that wire. Because if you leave it too long, it's going to stick out and your bead cap is going to be funny. Now, you're going to get a little bit of resistance because of that wire under that bead cap. If you wanted to, you could have come through the bead. The problem is then you can't stuff it through the 11-0 seed beads. It doesn't work that way. So if you have a larger spacer, you could come through the bead and then kind of stuff it into the next bead. But if you don't, then the wire is just going to stick out there. So you have to cut it under the bead cap. And this is our first strand. Our second strand, we will pick up one of the 8-inch ones. And we will just make this a little bit longer than this one. So we're going to start by connecting it to the connector. I'm going to move this up because I want this one to be underneath the one I've already made. Then I'm just going to grab it and put my wire around it. And then squeeze that wire together and slide my bead cap over it. And then draw it down and pull on the longer wire to guide it down. And just get it to the point where it's about the same size as the previous loop around your connector. And then arrange your beading wire to where they're laying side by side as much as you can, like this. And then you can see, and then kind of place your tool so that it is somewhat in between the two wires. The little pointy part on the second divot is somewhat in between those two wires, and then just squeeze. And that way you will get a nice parallel type of crimp here. And then we're going to place that into the first divot and squeeze it again. And then I'm just going to kind of go around and doctor it up, making sure it's very tight and very round and looks okay. And now I have my second wire prepared for my stringing, and I will just trim this down and grab a bead cap. Sometimes the tricky part is getting the bead cap over both of those little wire ends. And then I will begin again. So I'm going to pick up another agate, and I've mixed up my agates that I chose before, so I'm just going to do this randomly. So let's see, let's start with this one. And as I do the other side, I'll just look at what I have and kind of try to match it a little bit as far as the tones of the beads go. And then I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads, and I think another agate. And then 3 11-0 seed beads and a crystal. And then 3 11-0 seed beads and an agate and 3 11-0 seed beads and another agate. Let's see, let's get something. Yeah, that'll work. And then I'm going to pick up 3 11-0 seed beads and a crystal. Actually, I think, yeah, that'll work. And then 3 11-0 seed beads. Let me back off a little. I don't even know if you can see that very well, but I'm just stringing, so it doesn't really matter. And then I'm going to put on another agate. I think I want a brighter blue here. And 3 11-0 seed beads. And another agate. And that should be a little bit longer than the first one. Yep, just right. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick up a bead cap and a crimp bead, and then I'm going to connect it to this connector. So, see if I can get this all arranged. And make sure I have enough beads to where it's going to lay okay. If it will quit arguing with me, then I can do this. Let's see. Yeah, I think that's going to be okay. So you just want to make sure the lower one is longer than the first one and has enough room to kind of swag a little bit. And then just go back into your crimp bead and do the same thing we've been doing. Go underneath the bead cap, pull the longer length of wire, adjust the size of your loop to make sure that it is going to move a little bit. And then grab your crimping tool, look at the way your layers are lying, yes, your wires are lying, and go in between the two with your crimp tool, like so. Now this loop is a little bit longer than this one, so on my next side, I will compare the loops on this wire as I'm making this wire, and compare the loops on this wire as I'm making the top wire. That way I can keep them the same length, basically. Just try to match them on either side. Cut that down. And now I have the first half here. And so we're going to do the exact same thing on the other side. So go ahead and just match exactly what you did, putting your first one, of course, towards the top, your second one underneath it, and attach it to the next component over here, and we'll be back. Okay, quick hint, it might be easier to go ahead and put both of your wires on since you've already got stuff on your connector and it's a little bit harder to manipulate. Once you get one of your other strands on this side, it'll be even harder. So if you go ahead and put both of your wires on, just make sure that you have it lined up right to where the shorter wire is on top of the longer wire, and then you can go ahead and string and connect. So string the first one and connect it, and then string the second one and connect it. It'll be easier than trying to do both and keeping all of the beads on the wire. So that's just a little bit of a tip to help you manipulate this a little better. Okay, so this is what I have now. And now I'm just going to attach my pendant to the bottom, and then I'll make my longer straps towards the top. That way I can measure it out, see exactly how it's going to lay, and figure out how long I want the back to be. So I'm going to grab my pendant, and I'm going to try this jump ring. This is a really thick, really difficult jump ring to use, so I may not be really graceful with this, so we're going to find out. I'm just going to open this and put it on here, slide it under here, and see if I can actually close this without too much trouble. Yeah, that worked pretty good. So that's what I have now after putting on my pendant, just like that. And now I am going to put a couple of little charms on either side. Now this could be the hard part because my jump rings are kind of small, and if you don't want to struggle with it too much and you're using something that's bigger around as a component, a connector, you may have to get out of your own stash a little bit bigger jump rings. I'm going to see if I can make these ones from the box work. I may not be able to, but the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put I'm going to take the Monstera leaf and I'm going to put it on a jump ring, and I'm going to close that jump ring. So I have the little Monstera leaf on here, and then I'm going to take a jump ring, open it up, pretty wide because this is pretty wide. I'm going to drop the Monstera leaf on here first and then the long leaf, so that I have two charms on my jump ring. One on a jump ring on its own, onto the jump ring with the long leaf, and then I'm going to put that on, hopefully on the connector, see if it's going to work. Alright, this may not be very graceful, guys. Yeah, it worked. See if I actually got it closed here. Look at that jump ring. Yeah, I think I did. If not, I can always go back and close it some more. But that way I have a nice little dangle right there next to my big component, and I'll do the same thing on the other side. Now, if you want to later, you can put more on either side or in the middle on these connectors too, if you'd like. I just want to keep some of my charms for another project, but I thought it would be cute having them on here. So I'm going to go ahead and put the other two on this side, and we'll be back. Okay, a little change in plan. I have decided to go ahead and use a little bit bigger jump ring just so I have more movement of my charms. And I put both charms on a jump ring this time. I need to close this one. So I put the long leaf and the monstera leaf on the small jump rings that came in the box, and then I'm dropping them on my little bit bigger jump ring from my stash so that my charm will now look like this. I think I'll get a little bit more movement this way. I think it'll help. So let me see what it looks like on here. And again, this may not be very graceful, but it is easier to put the larger jump ring on. And let me see how that hangs. Yeah, I think that'll be okay. And we can always put a leaf in the very front too if we wanted to. We could put a jump ring on and put a leaf in the front, just that lays over the top of the pendant if you want to. And I think I'm just going to stick with my design on this side and put it on this side and see how I like it. If I decide I want to put something on this jump ring that's holding on the actual bail of the pendant, we can do that too. And maybe a little monstera leaf right in the front might be cute. So I'll check it out, and if I like it, I'll pop one on there. And you can do yours however you want. You could hang your little acorns and your little pine cone on here too, whatever you decide you want to use. You could even use the little heart charms, whatever. Doesn't really matter. I'm just kind of staying with the leaves here, and I'll be back. Okay, so now I have made my focal. I've placed it right in the middle of my bead board. This will just let you know if you want to customize the back end of your necklace, how you can do this. So I'm coming to right about the 6 here. Even if I move it over, you want to make sure you measure on the outside rim. That's going to be the actual length. The inside is, it's okay. That's going to be where it lays around your neck, but it's going to be fine because it's pretty large length. So most people are going to be fine. So I'm trying to kind of center it and figure out what I need. So in order to make about an 18, between an 18 and 20 inch, I am going to need about, let's see, let's go half an inch. So we'll go 1, 2, 3. I'm going to need about 3.5 inches of stringing here. So that lets me know that, first of all, I cut my wire too long for my outside, but that's okay. So that lets me know I can use my 11-inch wires and string about 3.5 inches and put on my clasping. And that way I can kind of figure out how many beads I need and how many spacers I need to get that length. I think we have plenty of beads left to do this, and use some 11-0s in between as spacers. We could even pop, I still have 4 crystals. I can even pop a couple of those on, 2 on either side, so that's going to give me enough room. Now if you want your necklace to be a lot longer than 19, 20 inches, somewhere around there, 18 to 20 inches, then of course you can modify it to get even more length. You just want a vague idea of where you're going so that you can make sure you have enough room on your strand for your beads that you have left. So what I'm going to do is the same thing I've been doing. I'm going to get a crimp tube, put it on my wire, and then I'm just going to go through this connector here with it. And we have plenty of wire if you cut what I told you to. If you didn't cut it already, then cut it a little shorter. And let's just pull this down, just like we've been doing. Make sure this part has quite a bit of movement. Let me get you in here so you can actually see. So I'm going to leave the loop a little bit bigger on this one. Not huge by any means, but I want to make sure I have a lot of movement here. And then I am going to go ahead and crimp this off. I'm doing this with my left hand, so forgive me. Let's see, is that a little too big? You can always move your crimp bead down a little bit as you do this too with your pliers. And that's, I think, yeah, that's going to be okay. So now I can do my second half of my crimping here. And cut this down a little bit, drop on my crimp tube, and then I'll string this and come back and show you exactly what I decided to string. So I'll put on my bead cap. And then I'll just begin stringing, okay? And I'll come back and show you. Okay, so this is what I've done. I put on the bead cap and then the crystal, and then 3 of my agate beads with 3 seed beads in between each bead. And then repeated the same thing. So another crystal, and then 3 11-ohs, agate, and oop, I see that I missed an 11-oh here. I'll have to fix that. And then an agate, 3 11-ohs, and an agate. Let me fix that. We'll come back and as you can see, this is about 4.5 inches. Maybe you can't see, my light is hitting it. It's about 4.5 inches long. So I will measure the necklace at the very end and give you exactly how big it is. So now I have fixed my strand where I missed my 11-oh, and I am going to get out another crimp bead, and I'm just going to put my toggle on, and then I'll do the other side and we'll call it good. So here is my crimp bead, drop it down, go through my toggle, and get you closer, go around that little booger there, go into this guy, and I'm just going to hold on to the side that's stable and slide the other side through until I get to where I think it looks pretty good. And of course you want some movement here, so you don't want a really tight loop around this toggle. And then I am going to look at how my wires are laying in here. I'm going to lay them kind of parallel with my table, and this, what I'm talking about, is centering on your crimp tube, is this second part of your crimp tool, the second divot, the one closest to the handle, has kind of a little pokey guy right there. It's kind of a heart-shaped divot, and it's got a little pokey guy. You want to put that little pokey guy right between the 2 wires. That way you know your wires are laying parallel next to each other, and you can just kind of position that in that second divot and squeeze. And then that usually works pretty good. You get both of the wires encased separately. And then turn it sideways into the first divot and squeeze it again. If you want to put a crimp cover on there, you can do that. I'm not going to. I think it blends in with the bead cap fine. And then I'm going to cut this as close as I can to my bead cap so it doesn't mess with my bead cap too much. And there you have it. Let's see, just like that. So I'm going to go ahead and do the other side the same way, and I'll be right back. Okay, and here's the finished necklace. I think it turned out really, really pretty. This is about a 20-inch necklace, 19-20 inches, right around there. It's a little difficult to measure on a beadboard the exact length because of the multiple strand element here, but it is really close to a 20-inch necklace. So this is what this looks like, and I think it turned out really, really pretty. Now, I realize that we all have different colors of pendants. Some of them are gray, some of them have peaches, some of them have white, some of them, they're just all different. So I made another version with one that doesn't have as quite bright colors. It's very pretty. You can see through it, there's a lot of translucency and amberish tones in it. Not amberish, but kind of a tannish tone in it. And let me turn this over. On camera, you probably can't see it. But anyway, it doesn't have a lot of the peaches. So what I did was I pulled out the other tone that's in it with the little frosted antique white beads. And on this one, I used just the jump ring element for the components. And this turned out pretty too. So you can see a little bit different modifications. And these, I probably would have made these just a little bit shorter. I was just playing with it, and these are a little bit shorter and these are a little bit longer. But you can make it however you want it. If you have a long back of your necklace, it's going to hang more like that. If it's shorter, it's going to hang more open. So that's how you adjust how these hang. But I think this one turned out really pretty too. And it's just a little bit different look than this one. But I think they're both quite pretty. And I hope you like it.